Right, we'll do a quick vid here without the motor actually running. I'll just explain to you how to tune your carburetor, but also how to swap over if you're wanting to go to LPG. And of course LPG still has a petrol carburetor, and then it has your regulator coming through here for your LPG. Alright, so first things first, what we're going to have to do is get into here, take this carburetor off. Now remember the tuning, even just for if you're not converting to LPG and you're just here to see the tuning of a carburetor, it's the same process, because I'm going to have to tune a petrol carburetor anyway. So stay tuned to near the end of the video and we'll show the full tuning. Right now we'll do a breakdown. So all you got to do, your clips here, pop that off, pop your bottom one off. Alright. Clean out all the oil and that's in there. You might have got it when you moved your generator on a trolley or something on an angle, or overfilled it slightly. Right, okay, you got your two nuts here. So what you're going to need for the build, well, to take it all apart, you're going to need a 10mm ratchet, either a big one or a small one, it doesn't really matter. Then you're going to need a spanner. It doesn't have to be a ring spanner, just a normal one. And then for the actual tuning we need a small flathead and a Phillips. You also want a pair of needle noses or bent needle noses, and that's just to get the springs off without damaging them. Alright, so anyway, back into here. So you just got your spanner, you're not going to get a socket in over there. Now what you want to do is take that pipe out that goes over to the there. Right, now you get your spanner in there, loosen these off. Alright, I can pull that off. Oh, actually, you've got another nut at the back, sorry. So you've got another nut down here at the back. Let's get that one out as well, it's only bracket there. Alright. Now we've got that off. Now you see you're going to have a wee gasket just here, just be careful taking that off. We're going to be reusing that one because this one's a new carburetor anyway. So, and then of course off with the fuel line. Now what you want to do is get in here with your needle noses, and you've just got to take that spring off of there, okay? That wee spring there, it's latched in up here, wee tiny pinhole. Be careful not to bend the spring. Alright, now as we're pulling this off, you'll get to about halfway. I'll go on this side. Okay, you'll get it to about halfway and you can spin this over more. Now you can wind your revs all the way out, so that way you get a bit more give on it, and then you can pop that top piece out, okay? And now off with your carburetor. And I don't have to tell you, make sure your tap's turned off to your fuel before you do all this too. Right, so we'll see that gasket. I mean, it's pretty new on that, so I'm going to leave that gasket on there. Still pretty good. So now we're going to bring our LPG conversion over. Alright, we're just going to reverse the process. Okay, you get to about halfway and you'll be able to spin this. Now this, I'm going to have to wind the revs out on that. And then I'm going to be able to get more give on it, you see. And now we can get that wee bar there, put it up in the wee groove. Oh, right there. You can see I've got to push the carburetor in a little bit more for it to get in there. There we go. Oh, oh shit. Alright, push that down. Alright, now push the carburetor on. Now what you want to do is get that wee spring, use your wee needle noses, and you got a wee hole just up on the top here. Alright, and you can even take this choke out. You don't need that lever there at the moment. Take that out of your way, make your life easy. Alright, you see there the wee hole? Oh, right at the top there. Okay, so what you want to do is bring that over and get it in the hole. So you don't want to. You want to make sure you do it in a way that you're not going to bend it. All right. Alright, so we've got that in the top there. Alright, I'd use two hands, I just had to put the phone down for a second. And now I'm going to wind that back up to where I had it, because I've actually had this already pre-tuned. Now we're just going to put that choke thing back on. Alright, make sure that it double check that you got it sitting right. And then we're going to go for that gasket on the end here. Now before we put the extra cover on, what you want to do is go with your fuel line. Make sure you push your fuel line on. Alright. Let's get in there, get it on. Make sure you get that clamp on. Easy to use your needle nose pliers for that. Alright, so now we're just reversing the process. Alright, put that on there. Now as you're pushing that on, you'll find a bit of resistance. Now it's because of the fuel line. Behind there's a wee lug, and that's for you to latch your fuel line into. Okay, so I'll take this off and show you the wee lug just there, see? Alright, so you just make sure you push that fuel line into that wee lug as you're pushing it on. Alright, so as I say, just reversing the process. So now we've got that bolt that has to go at the back. Now because of this in the way, you're not going to be able to do it with your hands now. Hence what the 10mm ratchet's for the socket. Okay, so put it in there and then thread it through at the back. Before you turn that up real tight, now what you're going to do is come back up to the top here and now get your nuts on. Alright. Yeah, you want to make it up tight, you want to do them up pretty evenly. Alright. Alright, so just tweak them up. Now you don't want to go super tight, you know, you don't want to strip the bolts. You just want it really nicely tight, like firm. And there, yeah, make sure you got that up the right way. That little nookie thing goes over where the carburetor is, or where the intake. Okay. Get that on. As I say, wipe out all the oil and stuff out of here. Would have happened when you moved it, or if you've overfilled the oil at some stage, you can get a bit in there, or even if any excess comes through. But alright, get that on. Outer casing on. Now we're nearly ready to tune. Alright, flip over. Oh. Get our pipe back in the top. Alright, Now if you've watched this far, I am going to give you another handy wee tip here as well. Now if you're going to LPG, you know, because these are actually LPG or natural gas, you can use them for either. But if you're going to LPG, another thing you can do with your exhaust valve, just slightly adjust it in a bit more, so that way the exhaust valve opens up a little bit earlier, and that's just because the LPG is burning a bit hotter, and it will, and you know, there's a bit more of a oomph behind it, so it'll release that pressure a bit earlier, and that'll give you a bit more longevity out of the motor as well, you know, so there's less pressure all built up in there. So that's what I do with mine. I just tweak them a wee bit, just a wee bit, not much. You just need a little bit so it opens up. You don't have to do it, but that's what I do. Right, so now let's get to the tuning. So if you watched the other video when the motor was actually revving, you'd see that we had all the different idle. I went through all the different idle problems you can have. I'm going to tell you another way, like I told you how to tune it with a halogen light bulb. So let's say, you know, you've got in here, let's see what we've got here. Oh, try and deal to that light, hang on. Right, so of course we want to wind up our idle, get it to where it was idling. I mean, initially with this one, 12 turns from being flat on the other side. This one's actually 12 turns in for my final tuning, but I'm just going to wind that back in. Now you remember when I said with mixture, to get your mixture screw right, okay, you're going to need the wee flathead now. Now how I normally do it, as I say, these don't always come exactly right. I mean, this one here, when it came new, was 3 turns out, and the original carburetor was 5 turns out, and it nearly melted the spark plug. So double check the tuning, pays to check it yourself, and that's why I show you the videos. So the other one with the noise gun, you would have seen the flickering of the light when it's running. So basically with a halogen bulb plugged in, what I normally do is wind the tuning right in, and then wind it out 1.5 turns. Okay, so you wind it all the way in, and then come out 1.5. Now some of them you can take it right out to 3 and then go from there, but I normally go about 1.5. If you find your motor's not starting, just wind that out to 3. Okay, so we'll go the extra half and then another one. You see, do it in halves so you know each turn. Now I will tell you another handy tip. If you haven't got a halogen light bulb, what you can do once you've got the motor running, when you wind that clockwise and wind it in, what you'll notice is that all of a sudden it'll make a sound like a bar sound, different sound, and you know we've got too much flow or something coming in, so you just wind it back, and that's another way you can do it by sound. You'll hear the revs change, all right, and the idle will be smoother to go over like a sewing machine. Now you'll see on one of my videos I do show these running extremely cold with LPG on one of them. That's normally when you've actually got too much LPG flow going through it. Okay, so what you want to do is shut off the LPG flow a wee bit on your mixture and get a bit more oxygen going in, and then you know, so you'd be winding it in slightly, and then there'd be more oxygen coming in here, which, you know, then everything's going to run a bit hotter the same way the petrol would. But you'll see in one of my videos it was running extremely cold. But as I say, once you get the oxygen mix right, it will run a bit hotter. But use it if you wanted it perfect. As I say, plug in a halogen bulb, because a halogen bulb will flicker, and you can tune that next to you and turn it until the flickering stops. All right, now the next thing you want to know, of course, the jumping. When I was showing in the video the idle jumping, okay, what normally happens is, we're getting here, okay, now this is your governor, okay, that goes back under here, and under where the pull cord is, you got it on your flywheel, you got a fan, and that governor gets pushed by the fan with the airflow. All right, so what happens is for your revs, you'll find, like if you're running vacuum cleaners, high drain devices, you know, high powered watt things, what you end up doing is having to actually wind it, you know, quite a way in to get it running, you know, smoothly. But at the same time, you've also got to be winding your revs up. Okay, if you just keep winding that, what will happen is, if you find you're winding that and the revs this here starts jumping, you've got to wind this one up to match it. And of course, by the time you do that, if you find that it's revving its ass off, you know that you've got it wound too much. So then what you do is wind this back a wee bit, and it will start jumping, and then you wind this one back, and then the jumping will stop. all right, until you get it to the right revs that you need for whatever device, the devices you're running. But yeah, if you're running, as I say, vacuum cleaners, drills, any sort of power tool, high drain, wattage, 1000-watt things, because they kick in, like they use 2000 or 3000 on their first when you pull the trigger. So it's that drain that puts it out. But that's what you do anyway. But if you're running like TVs and using it to charge phones and things, you're out camping, well, of course, you won't have the revs up. Really, you won't have to have them up high. But as I say, that's what will happen. If you wind this out too much, it'll start jumping. And of course, if you wind it in too much, you're going to get too much revs. And the same here. If you wind that out too much, it'll start jumping. But as I say, if you need any more revs, you wind that out until it starts jumping, and then wind that one in until it hits it and stops it jumping, okay? Because like that goes through, and of course if this is, I'll get in here and I'll show you, normally that's going like that, and it will sit there and idle on it, okay? Now if you start winding that screw there too much, what will start happening is this will go vun, 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 like this, okay? And what you're doing is you wind the screw until it hits it, and then it can't keep bouncing. But as I say, if the revs are too high, well then you've got to adjust it wrong. Wind it back a little bit, wind that one back a little bit until you get it stable. And mixture, as I say, use a halogen bulb. So hopefully that's helped, one off out the engine noise going, step by step, now you're away. Quite efficient too, going to LPG on a generator, so it is well worth it. Now do remember too, before you start the generator, before I go on LPG, what I do is I actually tune the petrol carburetor, okay? Make sure you get that petrol carburetor tuned off petrol first, and then you've got your tap down the bottom here, that white tap, and that's to drain all the petrol out of the bowl before you turn over to LPG, running on LPG. And to turn over to run on LPG, all you got to do is turn your bottle on, and it pressurizes in here, okay? And then all you got to do, what I do is I hold this for 3 to 5 seconds, and you'll hear it going through, and it goes through into the carburetor. Make sure that's on LPG, not natural gas. The difference is the jet size. Okay, smaller jet size for the LPG, and the natural gas has a bigger hole. It must be, less pressure must be to get through. So you just hold that, and I'll show you actually. Let's turn it on. Right, now listen, and you'll hear it come through to the carburetor, all right? Hear that? So that's what I do, and then you pull it. Now pull it pretty quick. Now another thing you'll find when you've got the tuning right, so actually you can readjust it again once it's on LPG. As I say, go to your mixture screw again, get that halogen bulb going, and make sure, because I did find there was a slight difference in my mixture screw running LPG to running petrol. I did have to adjust it just slightly. But yeah, important, as I say, make sure you drain the petrol bowl out of the carburetor first, the petrol one, before going to LPG. And the other thing is, when you first start, we're using LPG, it's different with your choke, all right? Don't full choke it. Okay, the reason you put a choke on when you're on carburetor is so it creates a vacuum and it sucks the petrol up, okay? But with using the LPG, we're pushing this button here. We don't need a choke, okay? We're pushing that, and it's forcing it, it's already in there. Okay, so the moment you pull the pull cord, it makes the piston go down, and it sucks it instantly through, okay? With a choke, when you're on petrol, you've got to put the choke on, because it has to have a vacuum in there, so when the piston goes up, it sucks the petrol up. But as I say, with LPG, we're already doing it. So if you try and start it with the choke, with LPG, you'll find it won't probably go. Okay, so what you do is put it at half, or only a little tiny bit on, like on quarter. And then start it, okay, because you don't need it, because you've already got your mixture, you've got your oxygen, and you need that. You think of gas, LPG in a cooker. If you don't adjust it right, you get the orange flames. You adjust it right, you get blue flames. All right, so same sort of thing. You're going to be limiting the oxygen, and we've tuned the oxygen, remember? So if the oxygen's been tuned right, well then you shouldn't really even need the choke. So just because you're pushing this and it's feeding it straight in there. I'll go a bit closer. Hey, and away you go. So hopefully it's helped you, and you got to understand it without hearing the noise of the motor revving. So leave a like, subscribe, and enjoy.